Hello. Today we're going to learn about adding fractions with common and uncommon denominators. But before we begin, we have to first identify our fractions. So we're going to start off with this one, and this one's going to be our whole. So this is going to be labeled as 1 whole. Then we have this one. This one is going to be called 3/4. And it's 3/4 because 1, 2, 3/4 covers the yellow. You still have one left here. Then we have this one. This one is going to be 1/2. And this is 1/2 because 1/2 of the blue covers the yellow. Then we have this one. This one is going to be 1/4 because 1/4 of the blue covers the yellow. And then finally, we have this one. This one is going to be 1/8 because one single covers 1 out of the 8 dots. And by doing this, students can see that 3/4 is bigger than 1/2. 1/2 is bigger than 1/4, and 1/4 is bigger than 1/8. So for our first problem, we're going to do 1/4. We have 1/4 plus 1/4. So before we start adding, what are our rules when adding fractions? Our first rule is our denominators need to be the same. And our denominators are the numbers at the bottom. Then we add our numerators. Our numerators are the numbers at the top. Then we simplify if possible. So since both our denominators are the same here, we're going to keep our denominator 4, and we're going to add our numerators. And our numerators are 1 plus 1. So now we have 2/4. But what do you notice here about this problem? What do you notice about the 2/4? I notice that if I were to get one of these and start stacking them on the yellow, I notice that my 2/4 has now become 1/2 because I simplified. And when you simplify, you get a smaller answer. Okay, so now for our next problem, we're going to add fractions that have uncommon or unlike denominators. So for our first problem, we're going to do 2/8. And this is 2/8 because there's 1, 2 on the top. And each one of these has 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the bottom. So this is 2/8 plus 1 4. Okay, so before we can add, what are our rules when adding fractions? Our first rule is that our denominators need to be the same. And our denominators here are not the same. So we need to make them the same. But how can we do that? Well, if you remember your multiples of 4 and 8, we know that 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, and 4 times 4 is 16. And 8 times 1 is 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. And in order for us to get the same denominators, we are looking for the least common denominator of multiples of 4 and 8. I noticed that we have two numbers here that are the same, that 4 and 8 have in common, and that is 16 and that is 8. But we're looking for our least common denominator, and that's going to be 8. So since we already have 8 on one side, we need to get 8 on the other side. And how can we do that? Well, we know 4 times 2 is 8, so 4 times 1 is 4, and now 4 times 2 is 8. But remember, before we can start adding, what you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So because we added one block down here to get 8, we're now going to add one block up here. And now we have 2 8s plus 2 8s. So now that our denominators are the same, we can start adding. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep our denominator 8, and we're going to add our numerators. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 8s. But what do you notice here? I notice that I can take my yellow blocks and stack them on top of my blue blocks. And now that gives me 1/2. So now our answer is going to be 1/2. Okay, so now for our next problem, we're going to do 1/6. So that one has 4. I'm going to add 2 more to make it 6. So we have 1/6 plus 1/3. So before we can add, our denominators need to be the same. And just like we did in the last problem, we're going to find common multiples between 3 and 6. And we're looking for our least common denominator. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. And 3 times 4 is 12. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. And 6 times 3 is 18. So, just like the last one, there are two numbers here that 6 and 3 have in common. But remember, we're looking for our least common denominator. So that's going to be 6. So since we already have 6 on one side, we're going to get 6 on the other. And it looks like 3 times 2 is 6. So now we have 6. And what we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. And since I added one block down here, I'm going to add another one on top. So now we're going to keep 6 as our denominator. And we're going to add our numerators. So now we have 3, 6. But what do you notice here? I notice that I can get my yellow blocks and stack them on top of my blue blocks, which now gives me 1/2. So 1/2 is going to be our answer. Okay, so for our next problem, we're going to do 1/3 plus 1/2. And just like we've been doing with our other problems, we're going to find our least common denominator of multiples of 2 and 3. And what are our multiples of 2? They're 2, 4, 6, and 8. And our multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, and 12. And what I notice here is that we only have one least common denominator between 2 and 3. So that means we have to get 6 on both sides. And how do we do that? Well, 3 times 2 is 6. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. So we're going to do 3 times 1 is 2. And then we're going to add these. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now that we have 6 on both sides, remember what we do at the bottom, we have to do at the top. So since we added one block on this side, we're going to add one block to the top. And since we added 2 blocks, we're going to add 2. 1, 2. So now we're gonna keep our denominators of 6. And we're gonna add our numerators. And now we have 5, 6. So can we simplify this? Well, let's see. Let's start by stacking our yellow blocks on our blue blocks to see if it gives us a different answer. And I notice that when I stack my yellow blocks on top of my blue blocks, I still have 5, 6. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are yellow over the 6. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found this tutorial very helpful.